with your supply chain, with all the things happening. And what we have learned here is that rather than having one package solution, wall-to-wall as it's called, because that doesn't work. You say you are in an SAP environment, you acquire an Oracle company, what are you going to do? What we see all these companies doing is they cut up their various processes in small packages called SOA, very difficult term, but basically it is, rather than having one big application, it's small pockets, and then you can kind of put the puzzle pieces together. So we see that assembling parts of a process, supply chain or whatever, is becoming much easier. So let me close my logic here. What we've seen is a lot of internet things coming in a generation where people get lost in the information, where they don't know, where not everybody is able to reach each other, and where CEOs and CIOs say that is important. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, there are 4 practical recommendations that I would like to put on the table. Things that you should consider doing going forward when you leave this room here over the next year or 2 years. One is, put what I call a spider on top of your systems. It's called analytics. So don't change the system, but just say, what is the really relevant information? Put a spider in, extract the relevant information, make a dashboard out of that. For your marketing organization, for your supply chain organization, for your customer management organization, for your partners that are with you in the business, so that it's immediately transparent what is happening. Second, data visualization. Make it easy for people to grasp the information. Don't throw tons of information. Have, here are the 5 factors that we in manufacturing, we in procurement, we in finance want to measure on a day-by-day basis, and here are the 5 things that we want to measure on a week-by-week basis. Make it immediately visible and give an email or whatever tool you have on a daily basis with graphs so that people know we're doing well, we're not doing well. We should do more of this and less of that. Days accountable, days payable are fine, but we're having a problem in our stock levels, so let's focus on that. Collaborative spaces, I've said enough about that. Totally crucial, very important. Real-time messaging and visibility of everybody in your company with their own billboards, so to speak. And then fourthly, that difficult term called service-oriented architecture, but cut your processes into pieces so that you can more easily move things out and into the company. And then my closing argument, let's not forget, for those of you who are CIOs here, there's a nice report. I'm trying to get you a booklet here, and I probably will have it by the end of the dinner, lunch I should say. The booklet has 200 of our reports and also has a CIO and the CEO report, and as well as this report, so that you can have it all, for yourself. So I'll try to have that with you. So those would be my arguments for the discussion later today. A lot of stuff, and I'd like to suggest that, do we have time for question and answer, or is it next speaker now?
Time for quick questions. Thanks very much for having stayed exactly within the time limit, which means, of course, we'll have time to come back to you throughout the panel discussions. If there are any urgent interventions immediately after this intervention, there's an opportunity for that. Otherwise, we'll have it during the panel discussion. Interesting that when the slide came up with the definition of the theme of our session, digital natives, that slide was gone within a fraction of a second. But then, of course, at another part, during another moment, you said that we all, to some extent, that was a hopeful message. You're giving us the opportunity to be digital natives, all of us. Well, exactly what do you mean by that?
The official term, if you want to call it that way, I think, the Generation Y will be redubbed, like we were the flower power generation, at least I'm part of that, as the digital natives generation. The X and Y is pretty nondescript, and maybe the Generation X will stay Generation X, but the Generation Y, I think, will be digital natives. These people, as was said at the beginning, were born with the internet. They know no other, and some of you will have children between the age of, let's say, 10 and 25, and they're at the internet, all the time. They live that way. That's the new way of life. My father bought a big encyclopedia. There's more information free available to anybody. Our cell phones, whether it's an iPhone or a BlackBerry, have access to the internet, and you can find your definitions, you can find words in translation, things like that. So we're living that way, and as I said, this group here, we are digital natives as well. The issue, quite frankly, is that 80% of people, let's say between the age of 40 and 60, 8 these days in our organization are not as digital native as we would like them to be, and we have to learn them to be that. That's where the challenge is. If you don't do that, you will not have a workforce, particularly in our high labor cost countries, that can compete with people in India and in Brazil and in Argentina and in South Africa and in China and so on and so forth.
Okay, let me ask all of you, anybody in the audience who does not feel he or she is a digital native? And okay, let's hear from Mark Lombard, and we'll have a bit of discussion later, very quickly.
Yeah, just to get started, I am not a digital native, and I will never be a digital native. At best, I will be a digital wannabe. But why would I want to be that? It's like Michael Jackson saying, I'm white. Let's simply accept we are not, and let's focus on working and living with digital natives and not pretend to be one.
Okay, Peter Korsten, we'll come back to that during the discussion, during the panel discussion. Thanks very much, Mark Lombard, for bringing it up, because to some extent that's a perfect introduction for our second thought leader. Peter Korsten, sehr vielen Dank, and you deserve a round of applause. And I'll be back with you with the microphone in just a minute. Our next speaker, we all know, had in his latest book, a very interesting title for those of us interested in good food, Fusion, but it was all about fusion, of course, between business management and IT, and now he's working on a new book. I think it's going to be out probably in October or September, and the basic question really is, where do we stand today? Most of us will vividly remember the book that came out in 1995, Nicholas Negroponte's Being Digital, opening up the dream of this world that was coming. How far are we today, and what's ahead of us? That's the basic question that Peter Hinze will be tackling in his book. And interestingly, he thinks we should stop talking about things digital. Why? Peter Hinze.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I will make... Peter Korsten, are you German, or is Peter? Is he? Yeah, are you German? Nederlands, okay. Then. I had a good joke about the Germans, but I'll find a Dutch joke. That's not a problem. I'm extremely honored to be here today, and I think the subject of digital natives is a very interesting one. What I would like to spend half an hour on is a theme that I call the new normal. And I think it's a very interesting way to look at this digital scene, because a lot of questions are in the timing. Where are we in this whole thing digital? And my statement is very simple: we're halfway there. My statement is in the sense that we're entering a zone where digital isn't special anymore, but digital is just normal. And if you look at the evolution in technology, we spent maybe 20, 25 years as organizations becoming more digital. And some people think we've now arrived in a digital era. My point is we're halfway there. And we're entering a zone where from now on the glass is more half full than half empty, which means that digital isn't special anymore, digital is just normal. My statement is we're halfway there. I was in Frankfurt last week doing this speech, and the Germans had extreme difficulty with that statement. They kept asking me, but how do you know we're exactly halfway? I don't, okay? It's a Gedanken experiment. Huh? It's just, try and think what the world is going to be once we cross that halfway point and digital isn't actually something special. I'm not a digital native because I'm a digital immigrant like most of you here. And I think the reason I got into IT is because somebody introduced me to technology, but technology wasn't around. I do consider myself to be a true nerd. I recently outed myself to my family. They were glad I finally got it into the open, that I was able to talk about this, but I am a true technologist, as I see many of my relatives here in the audience today. And I actually come from a long line of nerds, because my father was a nerd and my grandfather was a nerd. But It's probably